Our success in managing toxic people lies entirely in our hands. Our power is in setting boundaries. If we fail to assume this responsibility, we are handing our power to someone else and losing control at a critical stage. Failure to have the courage to set appropriate boundaries always ends in pain and suffering. By setting, respecting, and taking responsibility for these boundaries, we are exercising our power and taking control over ourselves and the outcome we wish to achieve. Understanding we have power over our thoughts allows us to calmly make conscious decisions to establish the boundaries that will guide us, as well as those we wish to establish with others. Whatever the circumstances, it is up to us to carefully think through these boundaries first, and then we must decide which ones we wish to establish with the toxic person. If we hand over our power to a toxic person, they will be only too pleased to take it, and they will use it against us. Having made clear what we feel our boundaries should be, we now need to express them clearly and calmly to the toxic party. If we believe those boundaries are being crossed, it is perfectly appropriate and indeed essential to politely point this out and, if necessary, disengage and walk away.
Never be frightened to disengage. It's often the best decision, since to allow a boundary to be crossed sets a very bad precedent. So disengaging doesn't mean accepting the other's position, nor does it mean that we're in any way surrendering or weakly withdrawing, but it does signify that we do not and will not accept what the toxic person is saying or doing. But it has to be done correctly. So you can use the following steps to set the boundaries, remembering to always act in a calm, controlled way. So in the case of an action or words that you consider inappropriate, number 1, say that you're disengaging. I'm not continuing with this conversation right now. Say it straight without anger, resentment, or an attitude of superiority, condescension, or apology. Number 3, if you feel the need to give any explanation, and you really don't need to provide one, say you believe it will be more sensible to stop and regroup at another time. No other reason or explanation is warranted. The more you add, the more likely you are to be redrawn into a toxic morass. You always have the right to set any boundary you choose. Because, for example, you work closely with someone doesn't mean you have to accept their behavior. You don't have to submit to unacceptable aggression or language anywhere, be it in the home, the office, or online. The key to setting boundaries is to do this consciously and deliberately, with clarity about what they are and when they apply. In the workplace, it doesn't matter if what you're saying is already covered by law or company regulation. The absolute key is to hold to your established boundaries and not waver. Once a toxic person fully realizes that you will adhere to your limits, it'll be very difficult for them to argue against the boundaries. The toxic person, being a bully and by definition a coward, will feel very uncomfortable but will have little to push back against. However, if they do try to push back, stay firm. A little persistence early on will save endless problems later. And once established, you'll have created an excellent precedent from which you will also draw moral strength. By setting your own boundaries and explaining them clearly to the other party, you have a means to exercise important control over any situation.